Alright, welcome. This is Scout Solo Campaign Traveler with a mix of other resources. Refer to my video before this one where I covered all the resources I'm using for this campaign. But what I thought I'd do here real quick is play through using the Mythic that I mentioned before, the Mythic Solo Emulator guidance to play through the next scene. And I've talked about that. Scenes are what this solo emulator uses to break up a campaign. So I'm going to go ahead and do the mechanics of following it and our scene here. So our situation is our two scout ships are at the 100D distance from the system, Qatari, owned by the Surin Empire. Surin system defense boat has escorted our Intrepid out here where we ran into the Endurance. And basically the command is, okay, just leave the system. Maybe come back in 3 weeks after we've talked to the main government about whether we want to establish relationships. Initially, our crew in the Intrepid had planned on jumping back to the scout base to make this report, but the Endurance was lurking for backstories, basically, probably working for one of the intelligence services. And the Imperium knew that these guys were here, so was lurking here just to make sure everything went okay. The Surins detected it though, and luckily they were basically saying, hey, y'all need to leave. They didn't really go to attack. So at this point, the Endurance has collected all the information from the Intrepid, which it can take back to the base. And the orders are for the Intrepid to jump now to this system and start surveying down this arm here. So our scene is basically both ships are getting ready to jump. The Endurance probably already had the jump calculations done, but for going back to the home base. But unfortunately, the Intrepid now has to regenerate jump calculations for its new destination here. So there is maybe a chance, not high, that the Surins may become impatient. So we'll factor that into our scene here. So just following how this works, elements of a scene. This is out of the Mythic Emulator. And the first thing you do is generate your lists for this scene. So our scene here is going to be jumping out of system, basically. We're at the 100 diameter jumping out of system. And your lists identify things that as we move through, items that, random events or whatever could be played against. So we identify our characters, locations, groups, objects, and events. So in this case, I listed all the crew of the Intrepid. Something could happen to the Intrepid itself. I've also got the Surin ship and crew. And, if I do get a random event, you roll against this to determine. And then we've got the Endurance and the Endurance crew. And you also identify threads and goals, potentially, that could get tweaked too. So we got the Surins are monitoring that they leave the system. And then we've got a prep for jump for both of them, and then a jump. So, first thing, the list basically identifies all the participants in the scene that events later could occur to. Okay, as you play out the scene. All right. Now, this isn't the first scene, so we can immediately jump to the scene test. And this is where you define what you expect to happen, but then potentially something else could happen. And the basis for that is a chaos factor. And if you look at the chaos factor, that concept here, and that affects the fate table rolls and the scene check also. But each scene we evaluate, was the player character mostly in control? Yes, -1 reduces the chaos factor. No, increases the chaos factor. Now, I'm going to go out on a limb. Basically, I don't view the player characters as being in control of anything, even here. So the chaos factor has come up to 7 now, all right? Because they weren't in control of being escorted to the jump point, and then they weren't in control when they ran into the Endurance, and the Surans basically ordered them to leave. I kind of view the Surans as in control, so that gets us a start of 5, and then +1 for the previous scene, and then +1 for meeting the Endurance. So we're up to a chaos factor of 7. So what that means, roll over chaos factor. So I roll 1d10, and if I roll over the chaos factor, exactly what I defined happens. But if not, then we can have an altered scene, and then potentially we can roll against these here. There's scene adjustment, meaning tables, fate questions, we'll see. Could apply against one of these. And then we've got a total interrupt scene. Hey, we were planning on jumping, but the scene is completely interrupted by something else. And that's potentially a random event, all right? So at this point, that's the first thing we'll roll. We'll roll a D10 here on my handy dandy calculator dice. The sides on the dice are 10. And again, a 1. Okay, so the problem we're going to see is it's going to have to roll pretty high to get above that chaos factor. Oh, I hit stop. It's an altered scene, which is fine. At least it wasn't an interrupt. Who knows what could have been happening there, but the scene doesn't quite go as expected. So our next step is to look at this. Let's see, scene altered. And they give you some general recommendations on how the scene can be altered. Maybe another expectation. Don't have a tweak, a fate question. I can go to the meanings table, or there's even a scene adjustment table. Let's take a look at that. And here is the scene adjustment table, so we could roll 1d10 against that also. So here's the actual emulator. Give us an explanation of what this means. So one of them we said was a next expectation. There really is no next expectation. It's time to jump. It's if you had different ways to handle a scene, I'm sure you could use that and pick one of those. Another thing you can do is just make a simple tweak to the scene. I don't know how. I'd think about that. Maybe, that could lead us into here. A fate question. Did the jump drive fail or something? Could ask a specific fate question right now. And then another option is meaning tables to just inspire you. Or you can go right to randomize tweak, roll 1d10, and consult the scene adjustment table to see what changes in it. So I'm tempted to just do the scene adjustment table, keep it random here. So let's see what happens. And then we have to figure out what it means. All right, scene adjustment says make 2 adjustments. Well, that's wonderful. So let's see here. Make 2 adjustments to the expected scene instead of rolling on the scene adjustment table until you have determined both. If this result is generated again, ignore it and re-roll. Good. So I don't keep rolling and rolling ad infinitum. So I'm going to roll twice now. Well, let's just use the power of the website here and see a 4 and a 5. Increase in activity and remove an object. Okay. All right, well, remove an object. There's only 3 objects here. It's the 3 ships. So we're not going to remove the Intrepid, that's for sure. So we do have the Surin ship or the Endurance. I guess we could roll against that. Why not? Let's keep everything random. I mean, I could logically say the Endurance just jumps early, and that's fine too, but let's see. Let's just, I may have to roll twice. Here we go. Oh, I didn't say what was what. Well, we'll just say odd is the endurance, just this time. So the endurance jumps immediately. Like I said, it already had the jump calculation ready to go. It just needed to press the button. So they jump and don't stick around and wait and see what happens to the Intrepid, which doesn't necessarily make our crew happy. Maybe the timing's off, but endurance jumps away. So, and then there's a increase in activity. Increase, the PC will need to be very careful if they're going to venture into. So now we got to think about what increase in activity means. Well, at this point, the Surans are monitoring, and our crew is jumping. So let's see which activity can increase there. So odds Intrepid, even Surin. Even Surin. Okay. So what the Surins do is they begin slowly closing and turning on more sensors, which is kind of putting some pressure on us to get out of the system. Actually, this leads me to a fate question. So let's see. All right, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to say the Surins are pressuring us to do the jump. And I wanted to roll on the fate table here, or ask a question. Let's come over here and look at that. I think the question is going to be, are the Surins rushing us to get out of here? Which may pressure us to do a quick jump calculation to get out of here. So if I look at the fate chart, it's either likely or very likely. And because I got increased activity, I got to go very likely. And chaos is 7. So 18, and I got to figure out which way. 90, very likely. So 90%. So there's a 90% chance they're going to pressure us and we're going to have to calculate fast. This could go south if we don't get out of this system. So yeah, 90 or below, it's a yes, which is very likely. So let's come down here again. This doesn't bode well. The endurance jumps early and the Surins are getting annoyed at us. Okay, let's see. They are breathing down our neck. With a 14, that's an exceptional yes. All right, well, that sets the stage for our jump. Wow. No standard scenes here in this playthrough. So to recap, the Endurance immediately jumped. They were ready to go. They didn't stick around. And then the Surins got impatient, very impatient on us to do the jump, and we're having to recalculate because they didn't know. I mean, they assumed we were calculating it the whole way out to the jump point. But no, now we have to frantically recalculate. So this is going to be a high pressure jump. So it's time to pull up the jump table. All right, so many different ways to calculate a jump. But basically first the astrogator has to do the jump calculation. It normally shows up as an easy, but I'm going to bump it to routine because of the pressure, and you get a -1 modifier for distance of jump 1, but that's also modified by astrogation and seems to be education too. So I got to roll 6+ with -1, but the education is 10 on our astrogator, so that flattens it. So as far as I can tell, it's a flat 6+ to pull this off. So, and no matter what, they're going to jump because, well, let's just see if they do well here. So the roll is 9. All right. I think they succeeded. That's a relief. Now the only question is how much time. So he does successfully calculate it, but then the question is, yeah, hurrying jump time frame is 1D times 6. Seems to be seconds, but I'll do minutes. Let's see how long it takes him to calculate it. 6 minutes, okay. And then we've got to do, I'm going to do a 6 plus on the eng also. So let's record this here. Okay, now we're rolling for the engineer. Got a +1 modifier. Thanks to education, no others. Got to roll a 6 plus, but we carry the +3 effect over, so that's going to help. Yeah, 9 and 4 is a 13, so we're good. If we get this right, we get a 13 with an effect of 7, so they've delivered. But the question is, I'm going to roll 1d6 on time. Dang, another 6 minutes. Okay, so takes them 12 minutes to pull off the jump. Now I need to ask the question of, is that's too long, and do the Surans get annoyed? All right, looks like we're going to roll on the fate chart, and we're going to ask the questions. Do the Surans intervene in some form? You know, boarding, orders to power down, etc. We're going to do very unlikely, but the chaos factor is the problem. That puts us at a 50-50 shot. So we got to roll above 50 to jump out of here. And I'm going to do 2d10 because on doubles, a random event occurs. So, big die roll. Here we go. First number is 10. Second number is the 62. Yes. I mean, no. They breathe down their neck, but they don't do anything to intervene. So our characters successfully pull off the jump. So the 12 minutes didn't freak them out. So just to recap, what we found through this whole process is interesting. I almost lost control of this one myself here. Came close to getting the Surans going to do something to intervene. Luckily, they did not. So we come up here and a solid jump calculation and jump and hit. We got a total effect of 7, even with the Suran pressure. And the Surans do not intervene. So I think that's it. We have successfully initiated jump. And it looks like a solid jump based on these numbers. The only question is, what should I do? We're at the end phase now. So that was a close call. I don't think our Captain Burnett was happy with Captain Astaire for immediately jumping out. But that's what happens. And the Surans did get a bit impatient and put pressure on him. But Bono and Bob Newhart and Sonny Bono, the engineer, delivered. They took their time, though. Nice balance of cautiousness and moving fast. So it's a solid crew here. And they pulled off their jump. So the only thing we need to do now is, following our rules here for the emulator, got to do what we do at the end. Oh, look, we did have NPC behavior. And no. Okay, so. And then what we'll do is we'll change the list elements. I think the next scene is going to be the 7+ days during the jump. So we got some things that could happen during then. So we'd manipulate the list. The only question is, did the player characters mostly control the scene? Normally I'd say yes, but with the Surans breathing down their necks and the endurance jumping out, I'm just gonna drive up that chaos factor. So chaos factor goes up one more into the next one. So we go chaos, goes 7 plus 1 equals 8. Don't know how that's going to affect things. Well, fate questions is not a good thing. That promises almost an altering or interrupted the scene. So some things are going well, some things aren't. Excellent delivery on the jump, but they were cutting it close. All right, well, that was my first work through of trying to use the Mythic emulator to drive. And as you could tell with this solo campaign, it was making things happen that I wasn't planning. But then again, the whole campaign is like this. I mean, I didn't expect to end up with a cube, 2 alien empires, and in the middle of some intel thing with the endurance. So this thing's taking a life of its own. All right, well, that'll be it for this episode. That's what we'll call it, episode of our campaign here. Our crew does at least get out of there. They pull off the jump, and the Intrepid now is going to go here in our next scene. The Endurance goes back here, and I'm sure this guy returns back to his moon asteroid base to hide out, and who knows what else is in there. So our next time, we're going to actually be calculating and seeing what happens during the jump period, and we'll end that scene with the exit. So, questions, comments, appreciated, and if you like, click like, and again, if you want to know when the next one is, click subscribe. Otherwise, thanks for listening, and see you for the next episode of our Intrepid crew on the ISS Intrepid. Thanks for listening.